California Governor Gavin Newsom is now calling his city's homeless encampments unacceptable, which is odd since he's the guy who, made them acceptable, turning sidewalks into red carpet events for drug addicts, thieves, and unemployed CNN anchors. On Monday, he urged cities to ban the camps from sidewalks, parks, and other public areas. So after years of denying the problem, he's now pretending.
I was on KBLA yesterday, with my friend Tavis Smiley. I'm an investor and a supporter of that station. And he said, who do you want for running president? I mentioned, I think you'd be good at the job. Not this year, we know.
Greg Gutfeld and Bill Maher just turned Gavin Newsom into political confetti, shredding his ego with sarcasm sharper than California's tax hikes. From his obsession with optics to his festival of failed policies, they didn't just roast him, they flambéed him. Newsom's glossy speeches and empty promises were no match for their ruthless wit. If you thought his hair was slick, wait until you see how slick they slide through his entire career. This isn't commentary, it's comedic demolition.
Then the Dems are now the party of disorder. Turns out the only system they had was wokeism, and it rotted any basic principles the party had to begin with. Which is why, like Gavin himself, they're left looking at 2028's hopes going up in flames. And this time, no one is going to help them put it out.
I see today the Trump administration, they talked about the fact that California had a rule that schools cannot be required to notify parents if their kids in school have changed their gender, their pronouns. That's the kind of thing, even though it doesn't affect a lot of people, that makes a lot of people go, well, you know what? That's the party without common sense. Now, if that's your state, how are you?
Well, I just disagree with that. I mean, the law was you would be fired. A teacher would be fired if a teacher did not report or snitch on a kid talking about their gender identity. I just think that was wrong. I think teachers should teach. I don't think they should be required to turn in kids. And by the way,
we're talking about their parents. How can you snitch? The idea of a snitch and a parent to me doesn't compute.
Well, I don't. But what is the job of a teacher? It's to teach. If Johnny's talking about some identity issue or some issue about liking someone of the same sex, is the teacher's job?
Greg Gutfeld didn't just stroll into the studio that day. He charged in like a man who just discovered California had installed a new tax on sarcasm. Gavin Newsom was the golden goose, and Gutfeld came loaded with every roast, jab, and comedic missile in his arsenal. With his signature smirk, he launched straight into what he called the Barbie Governor Chronicles, highlighting how Newsom looked like he came straight out of a Malibu politician playset, plastic charm included, but minus the assembly instructions for common sense.
Meanwhile, Newsom lurks outside the White House like a greedy relative in the parking lot of a hospice. Maybe he is the perfect replacement for Joe. Just like him, the corruption is baked right in.
If you're enjoying this video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. Greg began by describing Newsom as the first political figure to try turning a state into a luxury wine commercial. According to him, California under Newsom was less about governance and more about vibe curation. Gutfeld likened Newsom's approach to politics to a guy who thinks spraying Febreze in a burning house solves the problem. Homelessness was exploding, crime was soaring, but Newsom was too busy talking about the ozone layer while stepping over used needles in front of City Hall.
Instead of denying the problem, he's now pretending to fix it, which is like putting on a condom as you're leaving a whorehouse. Who hasn't?
What's a condom?
But as always, when a far-left Dem runs for national office, he acts like a Republican. This is where the left is really pro-trans. Suddenly, they grow...
Gutfeld wondered aloud how one could care so much about carbon emissions while ignoring the human emissions on San Francisco's sidewalks. He zeroed in on the bizarre contradictions. Newsom talks like he wants to save the world, but runs California like he's auditioning to play Lex Luthor's eco-friendly cousin. He's the guy who lectures farmers about water conservation while dumping millions of gallons into vanity projects that even Hollywood wouldn't greenlight. Gutfeld didn't stop.
Comment, he's an evil snake motherfucker. I don't know how to describe it. You see what he just did there, and Bill got it right. Somehow it's snitching if the parent finds out. If the teacher says, oh, your kid has been going by other names and changing pronouns and dressing up this way, you don't know about that as the parent. That's the snitch. It's the parent's job to raise the child.
He joked that Gavin's hair was the only thing with more structure and funding than California's public schools. The man's got more gel than solutions, and you could practically hear it crunching under the weight of his own ego. Greg noted that every time Newsom speaks, it feels like a TED Talk presented by a guy who just found out what Wi-Fi is. He's got all the hand gestures, all the tone, all the big words, but none of the substance. It's like someone uploaded an encyclopedia into a fortune cookie and gave it Botox. Newsom's speeches are the perfect sleep aid for anyone who finds paint drying a little too stimulating.
So Newsom is fed up with tent cities, the crime, the urban decay? No, he's not mad about that stuff. He's mad you noticed. It's like a criminal telling a jury he's sorry he robbed 25 banks when he's just sorry he got caught on the 26th. Because this isn't some spontaneous crisis. It's a man-made disaster like Chernobyl or Fox and Friends.
And don't get Gutfeld started on Newsom's obsession with climate. He described him as a guy who could be standing in front of a burning Walgreens, smoke in his perfectly whitened teeth, and still insist climate change was the primary cause of the fire. He mocked how Gavin managed to blame rising sea levels for high crime rates, traffic congestion, and even the occasional statewide blackout. According to Greg, Gavin would probably credit solar energy for his own hair highlights if you let him talk long enough. Greg poked at Newsom's handling of the pandemic, painting him as the guy who told everyone to stay home while he himself booked a private room at the most exclusive restaurant in town. He didn't just break his own rules, he pirouetted over them with the grace of a ballerina raised on hypocrisy and Pinot Noir. People leaving California like it was a sinking cruise ship staffed entirely by bureaucrats. Gutfeld joked that if Newsom were a landlord, the entire building would be vacant while he stood outside handing out flyers about how great the neighborhood used to be. Businesses were bailing, families were fleeing, and Gavin was still talking about equity like he was distributing coupons for enlightenment.
It was looking bad there for a while, and we still don't have enough water in the Colorado River and all this stuff. And then whenever I read 80% of the water goes to agriculture. Almonds. No one ever asked you about almonds. I see today the Trump administration, they talked about the fact that California had a rule that schools cannot be required to notify parents if their kids in school have changed their gender, their pronouns. That's the kind of thing, even though it doesn't affect a lot of people, that makes a lot of people go, well, you know what? That's the party without common sense. Now, if that's your state, how are you? Well,
I just disagree with that. I mean, the law was you would be fired. A teacher would be fired if a teacher did not report or snitch on a kid talking about their gender identity. I just think that was wrong. I think teachers should teach. I don't think they should be required to turn in kids. And by the way,
we're talking about their parents. How can you snitch? The idea of a snitch and a parent to me doesn't compute.
Well, I don't. But what is the job of a teacher? It's to teach. If Johnny's talking about some identity issue or some issue about liking someone of the same sex, is the teacher's job?
Gutfeld said the only growth sector in California was the U-Haul industry, and even they were running out of trucks heading east. Switching gears, Bill Maher walked in later that evening with that familiar face that said he just got back from a dinner party where someone dared to bring up Marxism between bites of kale. And when it came to roasting Gavin Newsom, Maher didn't hold back. He began with a wry observation that Newsom was the physical embodiment of what liberals think competence looks like. But underneath that Ken doll veneer was a political mind powered by nothing more than green slogans and guilt trips. Maher leaned into Newsom's pretentiousness. He said, Gavin talks like someone who just returned from a soul-searching retreat but forgot to actually find a soul. He smelled like progress, but it wore off faster than you could say rolling blackouts. Bill quipped that Newsom's greatest political achievement might be convincing Californians that their misery was morally superior to comfort. You're not suffering, you're sacrificing, he'd say, and people believed it. Maher said it was like living in a failed state with a fabulous filter.
They like the show, okay?
And the man who made it acts like he had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
It's pure government grift, shoving you down a flight of stairs and then making you pay for the handrail. We've been lied to for years that homelessness is all about affordable housing. Fentanyl isn't the problem, it's that loan officer at the bank. Yet as we walked to work, we never saw families or kids, just men. So strung out on fentanyl, they looked like they were playing Twister with.
Bill mocked the way Newsom treated electricity like it was a dangerous substance that needed to be rationed, but only after powering every conference room he visited for another round of climate alarmism. He wondered how a state with that much sunshine could somehow still manage to be in the dark, both literally and politically. Newsom's policies, Maher claimed, were the political version of cutting off your arm to stop a hangnail. Excessive, dramatic, and ultimately unhelpful. Maher also laughed about Newsom's presidential aspirations, saying the man has more ambition than results. He compared him to a contestant on a reality show who's convinced they're winning despite everyone in the audience screaming for them to be voted off. Gavin thinks he's the future of the Democratic Party, Maher said, but in reality, he's just a fancy new label on the same stale bottle of coastal elitism. Whether it's housing, education, or healthcare, Newsom always had a poetic way of describing the problems while never actually solving them.
See, Newsom wasn't just ignoring the problem, he enabled it because Dems were in a woke crouch, terrified of their loony base. But now that he's seeing the White House, he's got a brand new act, a common sense centrist, just a soccer dad in khakis, fed up with crime and chaos. It's all bull. A costume, a political drag show, and the kids this drag queen is reading to are the gold.
Maher ripped into Newsom's handling of education like a man whose patience had finally run dry. He pointed out how California's public schools ranked somewhere between catastrophic and please homeschool, yet Gavin managed to spend more time lecturing other states than fixing his own. He called Newsom the substitute teacher of American politics, charismatic, well-dressed, but utterly incapable of keeping the classroom under control. And the cherry on top? Maher said Gavin's idea of leadership during a crisis was to schedule another press conference in front of a golden backdrop, talk about bold new ideas, and then leave before taking any questions. He compared California's homelessness strategy to a game of whack-a-mole, where the mallet is replaced by a government grant and the moles are just moved 3 blocks down. Gutfeld said Gavin threw money at the problem, like a DJ tossing glow sticks at a black. Impressive at first glance, but utterly useless in the dark.
It's like the wildfires. Gavin blames climate change when it was his corrupt bureaucracy. Since the Palisades fire, which destroyed 6,000 buildings, only 4 permits have been issued for rebuilding. Did climate change cause that? Hell no. So like the fires, Newsom let homelessness run wild. He allowed tens of billions of dollars to be swallowed up by a maze of consultants, nonprofits, and bureaucrats who created poop maps.
He ridiculed the way Newsom handled crime, comparing him to a lifeguard who lectures swimmers on proper diving techniques while the pool is filled with sharks. Under Gavin's watch, California managed to turn leniency into policy and accountability into mythology. According to Gutfeld, crime was no longer illegal in California, it was just misunderstood. If someone stole your car, you weren't a victim, you were participating in a social experiment on equity and economic frustration. Maher returned with his own take on that issue, saying Newsom was the kind of leader who thought hugging the problem would make it go away, marveling at how many headlines bent over backwards to make incompetence look like innovation. He joked that if Newsom tripped over a traffic cone, the press would report it as a bold new step in urban exploration. Maher claimed Gavin had the media wrapped tighter than a pair of vegan yoga pants, and every time he stumbled, the press brought him a mat and told him it was just part of the journey.
I feel like the last couple of years you've purposely picked this fight with the red states. I mean, but I don't want to live in the Civil War country.
I agree with that.
You know what? Well, but you seem like you purposely want to set up this dichotomy between, oh, this is a blue state and that's a red state. Yeah. And I don't want to live in that country. I like Florida.
I'm with you. And by the way,
as for Newsom's ever-present smugness, Gutfeld described it as the only renewable energy California had successfully harnessed. He said Gavin's face had the same expression as someone who just corrected you about the difference between gelato and ice cream, unearned superiority with a hint of almond milk. Gutfeld argued that if smugness could solve wildfires, Gavin would be the answer to all of California's problems. Maher concluded his roast by saying that Newsom was the love child of good intentions and terrible execution. He's a man who promises the moon, delivers a glow stick, and then acts shocked when people are still in the dark. He's so polished on the outside, but hollow inside, like an avocado that cost $20 and still tastes like disappointment. Bill laughed and said if Gavin ever became president, America would finally know what it feels like to be a San Francisco taxpayer, broke, confused, and strangely proud of it.
How Californians used to sell maps of celebrity homes, not landmines. Now, instead of sightseeing, tourists play hopscotch so their shoes don't get hepatitis. And when residents complain, they're called cruel. And now we're supposed to believe Gavin? Hell no. All the problems of the last decade were based on his and his party's lies.
And yet, neither Gutfeld nor Maher was finished. There was more to come, more absurdities to highlight, more hypocrisies to slice open. Newsom had become the perfect roast subject, not just because of what he said, but because of what he symbolized. He was the shining emblem of a coastal political machine powered by buzzwords, funded by fantasy, and built on a foundation of elegant disaster, and both men were just getting warmed up. Gutfeld circled back with a smirk, saying Gavin's legacy would be a bronze statue of himself holding a reusable shopping bag while everything around him burned. He said Newsom governed like a man who read the manual for a Tesla but tried applying it to a dump truck. Maher chimed in from his corner of logic, adding that Gavin's dream California looked like a utopia sponsored by Whole Foods, yet smelled like decline in a compost bin. Between the self-congratulation, the decline, and the delusion, both men knew the punchline was just beginning to write itself.